Chaosu, and a good whenever it is for you. When it comes to recommending anime, it's not always straightforward. Some anime hit the ground running and are solid recommendations for anyone. Then there are those that falter, lacking in qualities that would make them worth recommending, or perhaps they're just poor adaptations. Then there's the category in between, where most anime lie, that recommending becomes highly subjective. The Hitman Reborn fits into that category. It's a unique gem that I so deeply wished was in the first category, but it's far from perfect. Which is why I want to talk about it. I want to start off with a little disclaimer. There will be spoilers, but I'll be trying to be vague where possible, because my aim is to convince you to give Hitman Reborn a shot, despite its imperfections. The story follows Tsunayoshi Sawada, more commonly referred to as just Tsuna, who is a clumsy kid that's not the best at anything, really, and he's generally a pushover. He's even given the nickname Loser Tsuna at school. And Tsuna's life takes a turn when it is revealed to him that he is the candidate to become the next boss of the Vongala family, the largest and most powerful mafia families in the world. The hitman, known as Reborn, has been assigned to be his tutor by the current Vongala boss to help Tsuna reach his full potential. Now that is just the setup, and it has a little bit of a problem of its own. If you were expecting this to be a mafia-centric story like 91 Days, for example, then you are going to be disappointed. The mafia backdrop here serves more as set dressing, but I think you can tell that. I mean, the joke is that Reborn is a baby. From the first episode, it is apparent that the story isn't about whether or not Tsuna actually becomes the 10th boss of the Vongala family. In fact, Tsuna outright says that he doesn't want to be. Instead, the main promise we are given is that Tsuna is going to become a more confident individual, the type of person who has the courage to stand up for both himself and his friends. And I think this sets Tsuna apart from traditional protagonists, because unlike Naruto, for example, who wants to become Hokage, Tsuna doesn't have some grand ambition. As mentioned, Tsuna wants nothing to do with the mafia, let alone become its boss. And on top of that, Tsuna's kind of spineless. Normally, main characters are the type of people who would always defend their friends and what they believe in. Like Ichigo from Bleach, from the very beginning, he already has the courage to protect others. Tsuna has that desire to stand up for himself and his friends, but he's too scared and shackled by anxiety. After all, what can he possibly do? He's a loser. But that's where Reborn comes in. Reborn is one of the 7 Arcoblino, or one of the strongest babies in the mafia world. With the power of his lizard friend that can transform into a gun, he can shoot a magic bullet that when hit, makes his victims become laser focused on what they regret, empowering them to do things that they always wanted to do. It's in those moments where we get a glimpse of the true Tsuna. What he would be if you strip away all those fears and insecurities. Reborn's methods of teaching are certainly unique, but we find out that they are actually quite effective at getting the point across to Tsuna. Sometimes. And as a student-teacher dynamic, they have great chemistry, because Reborn always believes in Tsuna, even when Tsuna does not. Of course, no battle shonen is complete without a large cast of characters, and this is no different. The mangaka refers to her characters as weirdos, and I can't argue with that. They're quirky but likable and add an entertaining layer to the series. From the loyal dynamite aficionado Gokudera to the easygoing baseball enthusiast Yamamoto and the enigmatic leader of the disciplinary committee Hibari, each one brings a different flavor, making the cast a wild bunch. But I will say, if you're seeking badass female characters, this might not be the best place to look. Other than maybe Lal Milch, I wouldn't say that there are any particularly strong female characters. That's not to say that I think they're bad, quite the contrary, I like most of them, but they take on a more traditional female role. And I honestly still appreciate that because they're not treated as completely useless by the story, and it's shown that their contributions are valuable to the rest of the cast. So it might be considered a weak point for some, but it's not necessarily a sin. So the characters are good, and I mean, it's not like there's any character that is particularly aggravating or anything like that, right? Alright, let's address the cow in the room. There's no nice way of saying this. Lambo is annoying. He features prominently in the early episodes of Reborn, and his obnoxious behavior, loud tantrums, and overall demeanor just make him a pain to watch. However, he's also that annoying little sibling that you can't help but care about. Let's not forget, Lambo is 5. And I appreciate that he's written to behave like it. All the negative things that I could say about Lambo would just describe most children. And so while he might test our patience, he does have a role in the story. When he is in danger, we have a natural desire from Tsuna and the others to want to protect him. And Lambo's behavior creates a great contrast to Reborn's, who is also supposed to be a baby, which adds a layer of intrigue to what it means to be an Arco Bueno. But do we really need so much of Lambo? So, characters aside, this isn't sounding so bad, right? Well, the series doesn't start off as a battle shonen. In fact, the first 20 or so episodes have a slice-of-life comedy format, with a reoccurring formula being Tsuna is faced with a challenge but is too afraid to deal with it. Reborn shoots him with a dying little bullet, then Tsuna rips off his clothes and overcomes the obstacle. For example, Tsuna has a crush on Kyoko but is too afraid to tell her. Reborn shoots him with a dying little bullet, Tsuna rips off his clothes, dashes to Kyoko, and tells her how he feels. And that formula might repeat once or twice per episode. So yeah, it's a slow burn that can feel like a slog to get through. But that's not to say that none of the episodes are good. For example, I really like the episode where we finally meet Bianchi's ex-boyfriend, Romeo, after he's been mentioned numerous times. And I wouldn't say that these episodes are skippable either, because while seemingly mundane, they serve the purpose of introducing us to the cast, and set the stage for Tsuna's growth and motivation. As the series shifts to a more serious tone, Tsuna expresses his desire to return to these carefree days with his friends. And because of this foundation, we have an idea about what he's talking about. So in my opinion, the anime is structured in such a way that each arc kind of emphasizes the importance of the previous one. But I do realize that in the moment it's hard to justify wanting to continue watching without any proof that it's gonna get good. After the slice of life episodes, we finally get our first dip into battle shonen. A mysterious group are attacking people in Tsuna's school, searching for the strongest person there, thinking that they would be the Vongla boss candidate, with the main villain's goal being to take Tsuna's place in the Vongla so that he can start a war in the Mafia world, cleansing it of evil. Now, this is where a lot of people would say that the anime gets good, but personally I think this arc is just fine, and that's understandable. We just got the shift in tone, and the mangaka's still adjusting. And unfortunately, after this arc, we get a few more slice of life episodes. For me, the series doesn't hit its stride until around episode 34 with the Varia arc, a tournament-style face-off against the Varia assassins for the succession of the Vongla. As far as tournament arcs go, this is pretty well executed. Each character gets a one-on-one battle where the victor earns a coveted Vongla ring, and the team with the most rings by the end is declared the winner. And from a narrative perspective, this injects some sense of unpredictability, because now Tsuna or any of his friends can potentially lose a fight without compromising the overall victory. On top of that, there's the mystery of who Tsuna's final two family members will be, and the intrigue of the Varia leader's goal, which adds depth to the arc as a whole. Additionally, we're shown the influence of the Vongla family and how there are some unsavory people in the Mafia that highlights how the previous arc's antagonist's goal makes sense. And Tsuna's character arc starts to pan out here as well. When facing off against the Varia's leader, after seeing how he mistreats his subordinates, Tsuna has a pretty powerful line, I may not want to be the boss of the Vongala, but I sure as hell can't let someone like you become boss. And for our wimpy Tsuna, that's pretty badass. So, the Varya arc is where I think things get good. But the future arc is a game changer. We discover that the Vongala rings that we've been fighting so hard for are bestowed to what are called the Guardians of the Vongala family. And these rings play a major role in this world's battle system. Yes, we are finally introduced to a proper battle system. And what I love about it is that while it wasn't clearly meticulously planned from the beginning, it makes so much sense because it's been in our faces this whole time. Deathpiration, or dying will flame, is an energy that is harnessed through one's own willpower. And while I like the pun of deathpiration, I'm going to be using dying will flame from here on out since it's easier to say. The bullets that Reborn has been shooting Tsuna with are like training wheels, forcing him to bring out his own resolve. Additionally, the Vongala rings themselves can act as tools to harness and unleash one's dying will flame. And these flames can be categorized into different types, with each one correlating to one of the Vongala Guardians, adding depth and variety to the power system. Now, to make this section a bit more fun, I figured while talking about the power system, I'd ponder on which dying will flame would resonate with me most. And I know Reborn said in one of the filler episodes that the type of flame isn't directly correlated to one's personality, but it's hard to deny some of the commonalities among the users. Let's get into it. The first flame that we are introduced to is the Sky Flame. I don't think they mention any special properties other than it harmonizes with the others, but I think it's implied to be the most powerful, because it's reserved for the people who are the leaders of their groups. And as someone who is certainly not the center of any of my social circles, or the one who brings people together, the Sky Flame doesn't quite align with me. The Mist Flame is capable of creating illusions, or even real illusions with stronger users. This flame is associated with people who are either very manipulative or easily manipulated. Not to set myself up on a pedestal, but I don't think I'm too much of a pushover, nor do I think that I use people for my own benefit, eliminating the Mist Flame from me. The Sun Flame has healing properties, and mostly people who have it are kind of like the sun in a way, warm, bright, and full of energy. People with this flame can even seem to be impulsive due to their excitement. The Sun Flame isn't a good fit. I do not exert that kind of energy. The Storm Flame is a bit like the opposite of the Sun Flame. It has more corrosive and destructive properties. But the users might seem to be a bit like the Sun Flame users in that they can be impulsive, but it's more because they're easily irritated. So having a quick temper, being a bit more aggressive and loud are characteristics of these users. I'm a bit more calm and reserved, so I don't think this flame suits me. The Rain Flame resembles water and has a calming effect to it. The users tend to be the kind of people who go with the flow and are generally friendly even if they don't appear to be at first. I think those are traits that kind of resonate with me, but let's not get too hung up just yet. The Thunder Flame looks like electricity, and it is the hardest of the flames, and thus is used as shield or protection, but it can also be used to just electrocute people, I guess. Users don't mind putting themselves in danger for others. This one fits to some extent, but let's go on to the last flame. The Cloud Flame has the power of propagation, basically the ability to duplicate things or change their size. Kind of like how a cloud can split into 2 or 3 clouds or turn into a bigger cloud. The common thing for people with this type are that they're kind of outliers, quirky in the sense that they don't necessarily fit into the group at first glance. I do feel like I'm on the outskirts of most of my friend groups. I don't do it intentionally, I'm just usually the person who talks the least and just observes and listens more. So Rain, Thunder, and Cloud Flame, which is it? I'm going to eliminate Thunder, since out of the 3 characters that come to mind, 2 are kind of joke characters. And while I do enjoy silly things and get a kick out of them often, I don't think I'm outwardly goofy. I'm a bit more serious, I think. And to narrow it down even further, let's refer to what the Guardians are supposed to do for the family. The Rain Guardian is supposed to bring conflicts to an end, calming things down, while the Cloud Guardian protects the family from afar with an outside perspective. It's a tough choice, but I do think that the Rain role would not suit me. I tend to not interfere with conflicts and just observe and only interject when things are getting too bad. So with that, I'm going to be taking on the mantle of the Cloud Guardian. Now, let's get back to the main story. Many battle shonen have time skips. It's a good way to showcase character development and introduce new battle mechanics, keeping the narrative interesting and fresh. Reborn's future arc puts a unique twist on this formula, while still achieving similar results. As mentioned earlier, we're introduced to the battle system involving the Dying Wolf Flames and the weapon boxes that can be powered by them. What elevates this arc is the palpable sense of tension. There is a mystery surrounding what is happening and who the enemies are. The imminent danger posed by the new power system adds urgency, creating a narrative with elements of a rescue arc where those being rescued are the characters themselves. Unlike before, where Tsuna would unintentionally stumble into fights, he now has to actively take things onto himself in order to protect those that he cares about. This shift adds a layer of complexity and stakes that were somewhat lacking in earlier parts of the series. Now, don't get too comfortable, because I forgot to mention that the anime has 2 filler arcs that are actually really good. Personally, I don't have a problem with filler content per se. What I have a problem with is when filler doesn't really add anything to my experience of the show as a whole. Filler is best when it makes the world feel more alive, or fleshes out some of the characters that normally wouldn't get a spotlight, or just gives the illusion of having some purpose other than to just fill time. And Reborn's filler does exactly that. They both function as like mini training arcs with the perception of them playing into the main story. Moreover, each filler arc introduces us to characters that have been mentioned a lot by this point but not shown. We finally get to see all 7 Arco Bleno and the original Vongala family in each respective filler arc. And if you've been following the story to this point, you've got to be curious about them both. So this adds to the story, because otherwise, in the anime, we wouldn't have seen them much, other than the few moments that they show up in the final arc. So this is a prime example of filler done right. Is what I would say if there wasn't one glaring problem: the placement. You see, these 2 filler arcs occur in between the future arc, which you might remember I implied to be the highlight of the anime, and this disrupts the pacing significantly. Imagine all the stakes have been set up with the heightened tensions and the sense of urgency, only now we can go take a break and go someplace safe for training. It's incredibly deflating, and worst of all, it opens the door for plot holes. Like, if we can send people who can't fight someplace safe, why don't we just keep them there? And the anime even acknowledges that, and tries its best to justify putting the characters back in danger, which I appreciate that they at least tried, but these filler arcs would have been better off placed just anywhere else. So technically, the future arc can be split into 3 separate sections, with the 2 filler arcs in between. But they just flow into one final arc for the anime. And despite the pacing issues, the core narrative of Tsuna's growth remains intact. The anime's final battle exemplifies the journey best, because throughout the series, Tsuna relied on shortcuts for unleashing his dying low flame. Whether it be through Reborn's bullets or later on drugs. However, in the final battle, when all hope is lost, Tsuna is finally able to muster up the power to summon his dying will flame on his own, without the need of any tricks. It's powerful moments like that that make the whole journey worthwhile. So while it's not a complete adaptation, the anime concludes on a satisfying note for Tsuna. The arcs had progressively kept improving up till this point, crafting a great journey, going from a kid who couldn't do anything to finally being able to stand up for himself and his friends through his own determination. Is Tsuna still a loser? Yeah, but now he isn't spineless, not when it matters. But I think it's Tsuna's development that might be frustrating for some people. Because his growth is gradual, he doesn't become a different person overnight. But it's those small incremental changes from arc to arc that make him such a believable character in the first place. And that concludes the anime. It ends in a good place, and it left me feeling like it was time to move on to different adventures. But as days passed, something was nagging. There's 120-something chapters of unadapted manga left. The Arco Blano haven't been fully explained, and most importantly, I kinda miss the characters that I've been following for 203 episodes now. There was more, and I needed to read it. And if I thought the future arc was amazing, the manga says, hold my Vongala rings, because this is peak Hitman Reborn. Things start off hot with the inheritance ceremony arc. Tsuna's finally going to become boss. Or is he? Well, the ceremony's crashed and Tsuna's family has to go to war with the Simon family. This arc also explores the origins of the Vongala family and retroactively justifies the lack of mafia elements. Following this arc is the final arc, the Curse of the Rainbow arc, where we finally unravel the mysteries surrounding the Arco Blano. In an exciting battle royale between each Arco Blano and a team of their choosing, finally giving us the chance to see why they are called the strongest babies in the mafia world. And you might have noticed these final manga arcs both included characters that were introduced in the anime filler. Thus, surprisingly, the anime filler actually enhanced my enjoyment of the manga by familiarizing me with these characters, making me actually care about them. But beyond the exhilarating battles and hype-inducing moments, what does the final manga arc do for Tsuna? After all, that's what I've been claiming to be the core of the story. Well, we've seen Tsuna become more confident, but there's always been something consistent. He always, even if reluctantly, listens to Reborn. Here, Reborn and Tsuna have somewhat of a disagreement, and for the first time, Reborn doesn't believe in Tsuna. But instead of just following Reborn's orders, Tsuna asserts that he won't give up. And while this whole time Reborn might have been mentoring him, now it's Tsuna's turn to teach him something. The student becomes the master. This is probably one of my favorite moments. Let's freaking go! Tsuna then proceeds to embody the role of an actual boss in the final few chapters, somehow offering an even more satisfying conclusion for his character than the anime did. And there you have it. That's my entire spiel about Hitman Reborn. It's the poster child anime for the cliche of it gets better. And I recognize that it has a lot of flaws, which is why I find it hard to recommend to someone. Like, how do you tell someone to invest in the 203 episodes plus manga and hope that they have a similar experience as you? But I do believe that Tsuna's journey is a good one. So if anything in the past however many minutes caught your interests and prompted you to give it a shot, that would make me very happy. Now, I would also be interested to hear your thoughts on Reborn if you've seen it in the comments, or just let me know what Dying Will Flame you think you'd have. Oh, and I didn't know where to throw this in, but my favorite opening is 88, because it perfectly encapsulates the vibe of the future arc, and I already feel a sense of nostalgia towards it. Anyway, that's the end of the video, and I will see you whenever.